Thank you, everyone. So we thought we would give ourselves a minute to absorb that extraordinary work and have just a few minutes of reflection. Please feel free to stay. Please feel free to leave. We will have a little bit of food and welcoming drinks out in the Nelson Atwater lobby if you would like to join us afterwards. Wow. Uh, Peter, Matt, thank you for being here at Brown, at the BAI, Brown Arts Institute. I wonder if you could share a little bit about what it has been to be in this space here in the main hall of the Lindemann, to be here at Brown. You'll be staying another week to meet students and do class visits. And some of the Amok folks will be leading some sectionals for the Brown University Orchestra. This has been an incredible time together. Just thoughts, reflections. What does it mean to be on a university campus in this moment? Whatever's on your mind.
Well, first I want to thank you, Avery, for hosting us here in this just extraordinary and ideal space to work. But I want to hand this over to Peter because, as I've said, performing this piece literally erases my memory of my entire life. So while I regain that, I'm going to let Peter take this one.
Well, just to say, again, it's a piece that would be weird in an opera house. It would be weird in a concert hall. It's a piece that just is inviting new sets of relationships. And this space creates and helps a new set of relationships exist. And I think, again, with Jory's poetry as well, it's the humanities and science deeply engaged with each other. It's a question of moving the humanities into the rest of the world and all of the other fields, because the humanities and the arts have been thought of as separate, like the arts district and the art center. And in fact, art is not at the center of itself, it's at the center of everything else. And so the idea of displacing all the fields which have their own places and creating a place where everybody gathers and all the fields are interpenetrating and are in dialogue is, of course, one of the most beautiful promises of the adventure of building this space here at Brown. And so that idea that we don't have the arts in a ghetto, but we also don't have law in a ghetto, we don't have medicine in a ghetto, we're really trying to reach across as many lines as possible right now, because one part of the world needs to talk to every other part of the world. So this building is a hope for that kind of engagement, and openness is necessary at this moment in history because everything is interdisciplinary from now on.
Thank you, Peter.
And I should just spell Matt for a moment. Just say,
No, I've regained.
Are you regained?
Consciousness,
Matt,
yeah.
I just want to say, Matt, would you talk about this piece also for 10 seconds? Because I just, said 2 sentences at the beginning, but you have something to say, and then, yeah.
Well, I mean, you all just experienced it. I'm not always great at putting language to it, but it arose out of a feeling that what music can do is manifest many simultaneous states of being within one person and across people and indeed across the planet. I mean, there are voices in this piece that are not human. There are voices of the medicine that's flowing through your veins. There are voices that might be generated by a machine that are speaking back to you from some scary future. And there are voices from deep inside of the planet. And Jory's poetry has been important to me for a long time. I think of her as a music teacher of mine because she really taught me deep things about, the act of composition. It didn't much matter that her medium is poetry and mine is music, that, these things apply in a deep way. I think as she's gone on a journey, a difficult journey with cancer, she has begun asking the most urgent questions about what's happening to her body and what's happening to the earth, and how those can't really be separated, and questions about the place of our species on the planet. And she manages to make it feel very immediate. You know, there's nothing abstract about this poetry. It is so visceral. And it just cried out for me to make a piece that, as Peter hinted at, is not an opera, is not a song cycle. I'm not sure we have a name for it. I don't really want a name for it. It feels deeply theatrical in Peter's sense of the word, where it's about these mysterious relationships and how deeply we can explore them. But, you know, we are not waiting on the Broadway transfer.
It's good. You never know. Never know. Matt, could you say a little bit about the extraordinary instrumentalists and singers that we are so privileged to have heard this evening? Say a little bit about who they are and how you came to be together.
Yes, so the extraordinary musicians that you just heard are almost all members of AMUC, the American Modern Opera Company, which is an ensemble or collective that I co-founded back in 2017. And the idea of forming this company was to make an interdisciplinary arts company that is not about an administration and a building, but is about specific artists. We wanted to commit to working with each other over a long period of time. The members of AMUC are instrumentalists, singers, and dancers. You didn't see any of the dancers today, but we have some incandescently awesome dancers as well. And the company's mission is to create new work, and I think one of the cool things about it is anyone in the company can lead a project. You know, this one happens to be a little bit more my baby, but everyone that you saw who is a member of AMUC has led a project of a comparable ambition. And you know, so it really feels like a mixture between a theater troupe and a rock band and a collective, you know? It's about the people who are in it. And so Paul and Devon, our tenor and bass, are members of AMUC. The three singers who were singing the soprano and mezzo parts, this is their first time with AMUC. They sang the piece in earlier iterations, earlier this year, first in Houston and then at the Aspen Music Festival. So they've lived with the piece and absorbed it in a way that just takes my breath away. It's just unbelievable how organic it is beginning to feel.
And Peter, you've heard this work a couple times now. What drew you in, and what was your process in thinking of how to imagine it in this space and other spaces going forward?
I mean, the process is very basic. It's being astounded by first Jory's poetry, and then everything that Matt's music says that Jory's poetry refuses to say. And so you get this incredible dialogue between her silences, which are filled by full-on Matt's music. And then as soon as there are multiple voices truly filling the air, and the density and beauty of the AMUC ensemble, because I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this group of people is the intensity with which they play together and the depth of listening that's going on, is you're getting very, very deep. First of all, deep listening, which is the thing we all hope for at this time on earth, please, but also genuine ensemble, not just playing together, but playing deeply in a zone of shared feeling and shared understanding, which is, I think, what the arts are here to demonstrate is possible. And for me, this group is at the far edge of what is possible in our lifetime. And it comes from daily people listening to each other, caring for each other, and a friendship that is incredible that you're hearing in the texture of this playing, which is not just let's play together, let's all arrive at bar 36 together. It's this opposite thing. It's that everybody is reading each other in very deep and beautiful ways. And no two versions have been the same yet, because there's space Matt has written for the performers to really engage, and the feelings and the emotions are running differently every time we do the piece. This piece has never appeared the same twice to me. It has all these potentials, and for me the pleasure was just making spatially a situation where you could see who's talking to whom, who's listening to whom, and the relations between musicians and singers, so that the musicians are not in a pit and we're done with that class system of, these are the servants and they're down there, and here are the singers. But you get that we're all equals, we're all care about the same things, we're all interested in the same questions, and we want to be together as much as possible. And so I think you can feel, I think the ethic of what Matt is proposing is an ethic of the century that we're in now, which is not 19th century. It's how can we be together? And right now, at a time of perpetual division, what are the structures we can create that insist that we're really together? And for me, Amok is just a blazing example. Blazing and also really quiet and understated and beautifully deep.
But can I say, because you sort of downplayed one thing, Peter, which is that Peter was part of this piece from the very beginning. The first bit of music that was written was the second part of the deep water trawling movement, the oceanic section. And when Peter heard an early performance of that, we started talking about maybe this should be a whole evening. This feels like something new certainly in my music, and it wouldn't have happened if we hadn't spoken on the phone every week, every couple of weeks for like a year and a half. And the great thing about Peter is that he can look at a score and, without hearing anything, and sense things about the shape and actually propose, and the great thing, if I may say, is that you always push your fellow artists to be their truest and wildest and strangest selves, which I think really helped this piece blossom.
Yeah, but you can give the invitation. It's the question of who accepts the invitation. Hello.
Is everyone okay? Any questions from the audience? We do have Maxime has a mic. This one just there.
Oh, Morgan can project. I will hear him.
I was wondering if you could talk about the instance that occurred around 50 minutes in, where out of nowhere we have the drum set and we settle into a groove. And a lot of this piece is atmospheric and characterized by moments of unison with one instrument standing out. I've noticed that a lot with the oboe and a lot of times with some of the strings. But there's this one section where everything congeals and suddenly we're in popular music land, and it's a kind of rhythmic vitality that we're all innately familiar with, whether you're a classical musician or not. If you hear a drum set hitting on 2 and 4, your head starts bobbing. And I was wondering if you could talk about the relationship to that kind of rhythmicity in this piece and just in your composition practice overall, and what, as like a classical musician, what makes you want to use a drum kit at that exact moment?
Thank you for this question. If anyone didn't hear every detail, the thrust of it is about the groove section, the section with a drum set, which, yes, maybe stands out slightly. Well, I think it's important to talk about it in terms of what's happening in the piece at that moment. This is in a movement called prying, which is basically a very intense surgery. And in this moment, we have just submitted, the patient, the speaker, has just submitted to anesthesia. The previous lines are down through this operating theater's Novocaine green gleam. So there's a surrender. There has been a lot of resistance, and then there is a surrender. And basically what happens in that groove is that I think we're hearing the voice of chemicals, things that are inside of the body that are merging with the body. So there are moments when it seems like it's still the person talking, but it's also not only the chemicals, but also the corporations behind the chemicals. And so what I want, and there are these really terrifyingly smooth lines in there, you know. This river's here to enter. And don't mispronounce your lifesaver. Don't mispronounce this medicine that's going to save your life. That's probably 9 syllables. And so it felt to me like we actually needed something really synthetic and seductive, that we couldn't be in a more jagged place because we needed a kind of corporate sheen, that we needed this. So it's this chorus of chemicals that is speaking to you, and of course they're saying everything's fine, we'll take care of everything. Which to me is all the more scary, that it does have this, and then of course there are these violent electronic interruptions, you know, and then we just snap back into it. And to the part of your question about, you know, a kind of pop idiom, you know, I almost like don't make the distinction. You know, these are all just musical tools that are available if you love these different modes of music making. So I just felt that that was what that moment needed. I've never written a piece that needed that before, but you know, for me, it's no less valid than using a bit of counterpoint. You know.
Effectively, friends I came with, that I now think I know things. I now think I know what it might be like to be with the audience at the first points of a writing spring. Well, I mean, to be sure there was no rioting, but it really did seem, feel to be epic the way that music publicity. So that's pretty much my song.
I can only say thank you. We're a little disappointed that you didn't riot. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. I'm still so moved. It's hard to actually talk to you about it. But I wanted to ask if you simply, I mean, simply is not the right word, if you were working with a completed text by Jory Graham, or if she worked with you as you were composing this so intricately braided composition.
Braided is a fantastic word for it. Thank you. The question is whether this text was given or whether I did a lot of arranging. The great thing about Jory with this was she basically said, have at it. Do whatever you want with any of my poetry. I'm not sure she checked with her publisher, actually, but she just said, do whatever you want. Cut it up, you know, slice it to pieces. And there are cases where it's pretty much a full poem. But for the most part, I'm reordering things, layering things. In the case of the surgery poem, it's actually 2 different poems that describe different procedures, one of which has super long lines and one of which has super short lines. And I found that layering those 2 gave me a kind of rhythmic tension. If I was only working with the long lines, it kind of turned to goop, but somehow putting it against. So there was quite a lot of braiding and mosaic making.
And Jory's cool with it. She's heard it.
One more question?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I'm curious as to how your collaboration actually began. You, Peter said you heard Matthew and then you gave him a phone call.
Well, we knew each other.
It's very knitted, and it's quite wonderful to see a collaboration that works so well.
The thing is, you know, Matt and I have known each other for 10,000 years, and also had lots of occasions to be together. But I first met him when he was, 12 years old in his second year at Harvard, and you know, he was just an amazing presence. You can't miss the excitement. And as he said, this Deepwater Trawling was a poem he had set, a section of the Deepwater Trawling poem that was part of a larger concert. And it's about 8 or 9 minutes long. And it's unbelievably beautiful. And I went up to him at the end of the concert and said, this should be a whole evening. And then I think he called me and said, well, what does that mean? And then we started asking each other what this meant. And of course, we had certain things that were leading us. And one of the things that I do love and feel very strongly about is that we're all in a period of history where we are like birds or fish moving on the current. It's not that any of us want to go where it's going. It's that we are all moving on currents. And this idea that something larger is shaping where we're going and how we're responding to it. And we like to flatter ourselves that I'm the count and I'm the countess and we have our own individual choices of how we're going to live our life. But in fact, so many of our life decisions have been made for us. And we are all floating on these prearranged currents that are chemical or corporate or political or whatever. And so many people in 1938 didn't want the next set of things to happen, but they did happen. And so for me to have a piece that gives you a density of experience that says, yes, you have your own thoughts, but even your own thoughts are contradictory. And meanwhile, you're in a universe that's contradictory. And to really put that on stage and put it in a sound world that has this depth of simultaneous experience, that was really attractive. And Mozart, changed history by taking his string quartets and saying, okay, these four voices in a string quartet are now going to be a father, a son, a daughter, a wife, are now going to be a servant and a master, are now going to be young people and old people, and suddenly they're going to sing together simultaneously. And that idea that across difference, the music is creating this total weave of inseparability, because we are inseparable from each other. And Mozart said, no, you are going to have to sing together because your lives are inseparable. And so Matt has taken this another step with just all of these multiple sound worlds moving simultaneously through each other. And the depth of feeling, one of the most incredible things is at the end, you have no idea where you've been. You can't explain what happened. And we all had such different journeys through this. And I think the richness of that is, to me, the artwork of the future and the artwork of the present.
So I think maybe we'll put a little pin in that thought. Dare I say this piece is launched, Matt and Peter. Really privileged to have witnessed that launch and to be a doula in the launching. So looking forward to the next week, and everyone should stay tuned for where the piece will emerge in the near future.
And may I just interrupt for 1 second? I know you're in the wind-up. May we just one more time acknowledge these incredible artists who are right out here with us. I mean, we didn't have curtain calls, but while we're eating and drinking, please meet these most astonishing people. Thank you. And Avery, thanks for a home. Yes. Thank you so much.